So we'll talk a little bit about Tonal, a little bit about the brand. I'll give you a high-level overview of some of the interesting aspects of the business, and Troy's going to go into the science. We released a big report late last year called The State of Strength, and Troy's going to dive into the numbers a bit. So again, this is who I am. I lead the product and the content organization, and just so you guys get a sense of what that means for a company like Tonal, we have a software function, we have a hardware function, and we have a big production studio where we generate all of the content, and I lead the teams that are kind of facilitating both what the look and feel is of the product, the manifestations of how you actually work out on the product, and what the content experience looks like on top of the product. Troy leads all of the science behind the workout modalities themselves, as well as the teams that help organize what content leads to what outcomes for the team. So what is Tonal? Tonal is absolutely the most advanced system for strength training that exists out there in the world. We're an adaptive digital weight system, and if that doesn't really mean much to you, you can imagine this as built around a digital weight system, a motor that can basically apply force in both an eccentric and concentric direction. And so like basically on the way down or on the way up to give you an experience that you really can't get anywhere else. We more or less break the laws of physics. If you're in a gym and you're trying to lift for lack of a better term, a dumbbell, which is exactly what it is. It's a dumb weight, right? You lift it up, you lift it down. It's got, a maintenance of force the whole way up and down. We can apply variance of force on the way up or on the way down, or on both of those things in a way that scientifically is proven to increase your strength in a way that nothing else can. We've got so many different sensors on this product that basically measure force and velocity on a 50 hertz refresh rate, which is basically 50 times a second. It's measuring how you're applying force on the way up and on the way down, including a gyroscope that gives you a sense of space on where you are in the world. And that is so intrinsic to the value that we're collecting that makes this the most intelligent product, right? On top of all of that data that's being collected and aggregated over the last 5 years, which really results in trillions of individual little pieces of data that's collected, we can build the most personalized system of value back to our members, which leads to these AI-powered workouts, right? Like without this data, you cannot be intelligent. And we really focus on building the most intelligent system to drive people to the optimal outcomes. And you can imagine today the optimal outcome, like in this early stage of development for the product and the company, of being around strength to look good, but really strength is about to look good, but really strength is about kind of human outcomes. I have aging parents in their early 70s, and the outcome that I'd want them to pursue is being able to live a kind of more enriched, more valuable, more healthy kind of golden year period of their life. I have young children at home. My daughter is now like 30 pounds or something like that. It hurts my back. Like that's an outcome where strength is important. We've got women in their 50s and 60s entering kind of a menopausal period, worried about musculoskeletal strength loss. That's an important area where strength comes into play and where this really intelligent sensor-based AI application comes to play. And that's really exciting. And it's exceptionally versatile. You can have 200 plus different moves. You've got multiple different modalities for working out. You can go from 5 pounds to 200 pounds. This is exceptionally interesting for the business. And the company itself is in a really defensible position with all of this data collected over the last 5 years, with the thousands of hours of distinct and highly produced content that's available. We are basically an N of 1. We've got an NPS of over 70. As Ian mentioned, we've got a churn rate of less than 1%. We've got a pretty valuable, pretty sticky product. 150 billion pounds lifted, 4 billion reps on the product, 30 million training sessions. We're not talking about a niche product, although we are not yet expansive in the market. And again, 5 years of data. And just if you think about this, the exciting thing for us when we think about this data asset is that any bigger company that tried to enter into the market today wouldn't be able to just compete on the basis of data. They'd have to go build a product, get hundreds of thousands of people working on this product, and then collect and aggregate this data over a long period of time. And we've only just begun to scratch the surface on what this data looks like. And so I'm going to hand it off to Troy after I tell you also that this is not just a male-oriented product. This is also a product that is growing in popularity with women as well, with the fact that if you think about many of the secular trends that are shaping the market today for physical outcomes that people are chasing, where it was once upon a time highly focused on cardio outcomes, like this post-pandemic surge of strength training and physical outcomes with weight training is becoming more commonplace. And we offer many women an environment to work out in their home, which is a lot more, for lack of a better word, safe for a lot of people and easy to achieve. And we do this for people from the age of 18 to over 80. We probably have many people below the age of 18, but we can't say that on like but
What's catchy is 18 to 80.
but this is applicable for many people, and here you go.
Thanks, Jonathan. Well, appreciate you all coming out. As Jonathan mentioned, my background is in sport, and specifically Olympic sport. 7 Olympic Games, 500 Olympians, about 50 Olympic medalists. Before joining Tonal, I was the high performance director at US Ski and Snowboard, so I worked with people like Lindsey Vonn and Michaela Schifrin and Shaun White. I've consulted into the NBA, into the EPL, and a bunch of elite different sport. And so you might ask, why am I talking to you about a fitness product? And so about 2020, when the pandemic came and I got a Tonal for Michaela Schifrin when she started training at home, I've spent well over $5 million in buying training equipment for various different Olympic sport teams. And the first time I sort of felt Tonal, I'm like, this is like a $50,000 to $100,000 device that I buy for elite athletes, but you can buy for sub $5,000 and put it in your home. And it would literally change in terms of my career trajectory and why I'm talking to you right now, as well as just sort of thinking about the possibilities of what this does. And the hardware enables a ton of functionality. You know, Jonathan talked about changing eccentric and concentric weight variations. We measure so often, so frequently. And that's super exciting, and I'm very geeky on that stuff and love it. But what really excited me about it is I spent my career helping the very, very best people in the world, getting 1% better if I was lucky. Like, these are exceptional athletes, you know, kind of things. But how could I take applying all this best practice, all these knowledge, all of like the PhDs that I work with across physiology and strength and conditioning and psychology and nutrition, and help a much broader set of people? And you know, you're taking 150 billion pounds lifted on Tonal and still scratching the surface. So that was super exciting about the scale. And the other thing was the data that these generate. We talked about some of the size of it. And what we do, and we've been doing for the last 3 years that I've been at Tonal and long before that, but is using that product and that data to improve the product, to understand how people are training, how to write better training programs. You know, you're in your 40s or 50s, okay, our data says you might need a little more recovery than someone in their 20s or 30s. Or you're perimenopausal, and how do I make you have some bone mineral density, and what are the training applications for that? So there's all this way that we use the data to enhance the product. But in this State of Strength report, what we wanted to do was start sharing some of this data. Yes, it's a good PR opportunity for us to push out and sort of, we've got this incredible data set. But this is the world's largest data strength training. And yes, it's Tonal data, and so it's about our members. But this is broadly applicable at trends that are across the industry. And so with this sort of State of Strength, we wanted to really do sort of a couple of different things. Number one, we wanted to present all the data. We didn't want to present like, hey, this is the cherry-picking best data. Ian might have liked that. These are like, if you train on Tonal, if you do these small asterisks 7 times a week, you get 400%. We said, no, we're going to present, this is what average people, the normal people get. The minimum level that you needed to be included in this data, I think, was 3 training sessions over a year. Like, that's not a lot. Like, this is like average responses. And so we thought that was important. And number 2, we wanted to look at both sort of what are current trends within the industry, like what would be really valuable and what can we add to that. So I'll present some data on female strength training. I'll present some data on the active aging strength training. Those are really common topics within the wellness space right now. We can't, you can't certainly read a PubMed journal, but even popular press without reading about some of those. But also, what do we have unique insights? You talk about that 5-year data. This is in people's homes. And so what can we add to that story that people don't know? And so I'll present some data around consistency, engagement. I'm all about optimization and the best possible workout. Doesn't really matter unless you do it. And so what can we provide information that shows that how people become consistent? So this data set, this is not the entire database by any stretch of the imagination, but what we did, we took 175,000 plus of our members. To put that into context, the average training study that I would read in research has about an N of 15. So 175,000 people, we looked at them over a given year, so between October 2022 and October 2023. So a whole year's worth of training. These people had lifted 66 billion pounds in that period, 10 million training sessions. I love this graph. One of our data scientists pulled it together. Each one of those dots represents a zip code where a tonal is, so you can sort of see distribution all over the country. And so our female members, we sort of looked, number one, we did some sort of AI on the sort of the feedback that they give us. What are the important languages? How do they talk about themselves and how about tonal make them feel? And so strong, accomplished, energized. We use this data to sort of inform how our coaches talk. So how do we speak to them? How do I feel like I belong? This is the language they're telling us, so how do we repeat that and go back to them? We use it in the copy of how we talk about it on our descriptions. So like if I'm looking right now, how do I filter a workout that's going to make me feel how I want to feel? We use it in our copy in our editorial articles, and in terms of there. And you'll see this language, I'm sure, currently in the past and in the future, in external communications. Like how do our customers want to do that? And so a lot of this, strong comes out, power comes out, great feel comes out. The average member is not lifting 2-pound dumbbells. Female member is not like that's been and gone. This is average of 3,500 pounds per workout. If you imagine that with 2-pound dumbbells, how many reps that is, they're not doing that. What they're lifting is they're lifting relatively heavy. They're pushing themselves hard, and they're getting big results. Average female member on Tonal makes 57% gains in their strength score, which is a sort of an AI estimation of their strength, in the first year alone. And again, this is the mean of all that, if it's 40% females and 175,000, my math isn't things, but over 75,000 females, let's take it there, and I won't go any kind of thing. But that's the average if they trained once a week, twice a week. And we know the more they train, the more bigger gains they make, but that's the average increase in strength. Something I'm super passionate about is our active aging community. My parents, much like Jonathan's, are in their 70s. I'm getting in my mid-40s. I'm more aware of, I'm not as robust and as strong as I used to be. And so we wanted to look into that. We undoubtedly have the world's largest database of specifically 55-plus-year-olds. We started, and I'm sure the team will talk about some sort of active aging sort of marketing campaigns that we're talking about. But organically, we're in people's homes. We're a very safe sort of type of equipment. So we've had this natural gravitation for some slightly older members that would like to work in that. So ends of 20-something thousand. So the role of physical activity on longevity is, I think, well established. This is a study, I think it came out, 2012? I think it was 650,000 people. It was a pool cohort study. Essentially, exercise, this isn't strength training, but physical activity can extend your life by around 4 years if you get to 22 hours of METs. It's about, essentially, if you meet the guidelines for physical activity for the US, which is 150 minutes of physical activity from aerobic exercise and 2 strength training exercises a week. It's right around that kind of piece a little more. And so we know that longevity is important, or physical activity is important for longevity. And we see that in our active aging members. And so looking at some of those, only 17% of our members are specifically training to get bigger muscles, right? Our active, that's probably about 40% of our overall population, but smaller of our active aging population, or the 55-plus-year-olds. They're looking at, I want to train for live a longer and healthier life. Building muscle is an important part of that, but that's not the goal, right? It's an outcome. The outcome is a long, healthy life. Muscles are a way for me to help to achieve that. And we see that within some of the exercise selections that they choose. So things like standing paddle-off press, which is a sort of a core exercise, super popular, more popular with our active aging community. So we can use that data to sort of help them understand, how do we write programming? These are the exercises. Shoulders, right? Rotation, internal rotation, shoulder rehab or prehab. Lots of things around core, lots of things around sort of maintaining posture. So we can use that data to inform programming and how we talk about it. But building muscles is important. I'm sure you've probably heard the term sarcopenia, which is the age-related loss of muscle mass. As we get older, our muscles, it's harder to maintain that. Frailty, which is essentially a combination of bone mineral density, osteoporosis, sarcopenia, and your inability to stay balanced, is one of the sort of precursors for a decreased health span. You fall, you have accidents, you break your hip, you then stay sedentary. Muscle mass is super important to maintain that. Arguably as important or more important than aerobic or cardiovascular strength. Definitely for longevity, so expanding your life, but the quality of your life later is highly correlated to the amount of muscle mass you have. Do I have the strength and power to get out of a chair, to walk up the stairs, to stay independent? And aerobic exercise doesn't do a very good job of decreasing sarcopenia. Resistance exercise with appropriate diet is the key to maintaining that. And so we see this in some of our members. We don't measure muscle mass on those 175,000 people. You have to go into MRI machines and do things like that. But what we can proxy is their strength change over time. And so this is a change in strength of our over 55 members. So in the blue line is our males, in the green line is our females. Over 2 years, so 2 years of continuous data, kind of thing. So you see rapid increases to start with, in the first sort of 10 or 15 weeks on tonal, that's normal, neurological responses, strength training. But then you continue to see, it plateaus, but it's continuing to increase in 1 year, in 2 years, and it's still going up at 2 years in this graph. You're still going increases. And so what we see is our males are putting on about 70% strength over 2 years, females up to 90% in our 55-plus-year-olds. Huge related strength trains. You might ask, why do females go up more than males? And there's a couple of different things. Number one, the data says that they're more consistent. They work out more frequently. Our female members work out more frequently and things. And they probably start from a slightly lower baseline. There's more of an opportunity for increase. And we actually see the beginners in the amount of beginners on the entire program, on the entire Tonal platform, I think is around, don't quote me on this, but 30-ish%. But we see a almost dose-response relationship that increases with older age. So more 40-year-olds beginners than more 30-year-olds, more 50-year-olds and more than 40-year-olds. And we actually see our 70s and 80-year-olds have the largest, over 50% of them are beginners. So people are identifying later in life that strength training is important on our platform. Obviously, working out, the more you work out, it turns out the bigger gains you get, right? And so this is the bar graph here. You work out once a week, you're still getting 25% increases in strength over the first year. Make that 1 to 2, up to 60% in the 55-plus-year-olds. 3 or more, over 100% increases. So almost a dose-response relationship between kind of things. So I take two things. Yes, working out more is good. But if you showed someone that, if you worked out once a week, you can make 25% increases in strength, that's not a huge commitment for big gain, big payoff. And the other thing that I'm particularly geeky on, and there's a lot of research evidence behind, is strength is important, muscle mass is important, but actually the strongest correlator of health span with strength markers is power. That's force times velocity. Can you move quickly? And it's not like, okay, I need to be able to power clean or jump or thing. It's literally getting out of a chair is actually a power movement. It's not a strength movement, right? You've got to get up relatively quickly. If you've seen some older people who are maybe a little weaker, it takes them a while, right? How do I get out of that chair quickly? Power is super important. Power is not a thing that's been well studied, but when it has been, it's been shown super important. And what we see is our over 55-year-olds, this is in deadlift, so this is the move where you kind of stand up here. They make massive increases, 145% increase in their deadlift power. So that's a huge increase in their ability. So it's really strongly correlated in the research data with their ability to stay functional. On average, our older members also work out more than our younger members, close to 20%, and females more than males. If you go in our community, the OTC, the official Tonal community, you'll see tons of, Arlene's definitely in there, but tons of members, and the support in the community is awesome. I ran a little over, so I'm going to switch through this real quickly, but consistency, that's something we uniquely have access to. We know how people train in the real world. Not in a 12-week training study in some research students, in grad students who are 20 years old, but people in their real lives who are real functional. Two of the things that we can pull out that are really obvious to us. If you make a commitment to following a program, like a 4-week program, increase your consistency almost immediately. And so from a product and kind of things, how do we get people in there? What tactics do we use to show that? Because if we don't work out frequently, we're not going to be working out and getting the outcomes. And some of the things that we get to see is the associations. This isn't necessarily cause and effect. This is correlation. But people that follow or have followers on the social media on our app, much more likely to be consistent. So like just one friend. If you have one friend on our app, you're almost 10% more consistent than someone that doesn't. And this idea of celebrating wins, there's tons of data. Like, if you go into the gym and you lift, you're like, what did you do? Unless you're logging in a logbook, you have no idea. Tonal records every one of those reps. And so you can look at your strength, your power, how your progress, and the act of engaging in that seems a really powerful communicator of consistency. So I'm going to hand you back to Jonathan, who's going to close us out with what the future holds.
Thank you, Troy.
No pressure.
No pressure. So you heard a lot about why Tonal is such an amazing product. What I want to talk a little bit about is how we're planning to bring this to more people. So the first thing is, how do we take all of this data that we have and apply it to human beings and create an outcome-based model that you could understand and follow? And that's where we're really excited to lean into AI. AI and large language models, while specifically today just a kind of a catchphrase, applies really wonderfully to huge unstructured data sets and allows us to put human language against the variance that exists. And so what we're really focused on in the first 6 months of this year is creating a scaffolding through what we're calling training effect goals, the ability to basically identify up to 3 specific goals that any individual wants to achieve, up to a permutation of around, I think, 120 different variances, and allow a large language model or a set of large language models to basically apply outcomes on top of all of the data that's being generated. The other things that we're doing in concert with that is building significantly new and enhanced weight models and weight modes to allow people to extend the way they work out on this product. So we've got a weight mode called perturbation, which helps with kind of core strength. We've got drop sets, which you can only do in a gym with probably 3 other people. That gets natively built into the product. And then on top of all of that, we're working to enhance our hardware offerings to allow for an ease of use as well as durability into a broader market set. And so what does that look like? Well, can't share too much, but we're basically looking into a much lower cost option that brings much of the same science that you're seeing here applied at a bigger market, and an enhancement to our existing interface to allow for both lower weight and higher weight at a much more effective mode, if you will, with better management of the weight for this active aging population, for potentially physical therapy applications, and a host of other market expansion opportunities. Really want to thank you all for listening to us. Be your strongest.